Welcome back to the Buying Sandlot podcast. I'm Kyle Pagan, head of social at Buying Sandlot. We have a great guest today, Rick Abbott. Rick has over 25 years working for the most iconic brands in sports like ESPN, NBC, and Formula One, and is a former CEO of Cooperstown All-Star Village with Unrivaled Sports. A certified baseball guy, Rick has dedicated his career to scaling youth sports organizations, developing unbelievable experiences for over 40,000 visitors a year, and mastering campus planning. We talked to Rick about why he's bullish on youth softball, the impact of major networks like ESPN on youth sports, the Savannah Bananas announcing their arrival into youth baseball, and the challenges posed sometimes by parent involvement. But before we get into the show today, I want to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode, Event Connect. Event Connect is the operating system for youth sports. It exists to improve the experience for athletes, families, organizers, and partners. You can run your entire tournament on one operating system or connect the tools you already use. Grow room nights, end spreadsheet chaos, and keep every data point in one place with their platform's seamless integration and robust features. This weekend, I'll be at a flag football tournament, a sport Event Connect has played a pivotal role in. From scheduling tournaments to managing registrations, Event Connect has been a steadfast ally, empowering organizers to elevate their events to new heights. Please support sponsors like Event Connect, who allow us to gather in your inbox and gather in your podcast feeds. And one more thing, tickets for our Buying Sandlot Summit in Philadelphia on April 14th and 15th are still available. Get those over at buyingsandlot.com or the link in this show's description, because we've got an amazing set of speakers and an amazing set of panels you won't want to miss. Check out the newsletters. We'll be announcing more every week as we get closer to the event at the state-of-the-art Ballers. Now let's get on to our interview with Rick. Okay, we're joined here by Rick Abbott, former CEO of Cooperstown All-Star Village and now consulting on all sports. Rick, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, guys, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, can you give us a little insight into what you did at Cooperstown All-Star Village and what you're doing now in the consulting route?
Yeah, sure. The 4 years ago, when Josh Harris and David Blitzer in their home offices of Bolt and 26 North approached me and asked me if I wanted to become the very first hire for what is now Unrivaled Sports to run Cooperstown All-Star Village. It was great because as you know, there's two major players in that marketplace between Cooperstown All-Star Village and Dreams Park. And you would think, how can one small little village, host 200 baseball teams a week? And let me tell you something, they do it and they do it well. Dreams does a nice park, does a nice job. I'm obviously, a little on the side of All-Star Village with everything that we were doing there and the focus that we had while we were there and doing it together and growing it. After the first year, Kyle, we merged with Ripken Baseball, which was a huge move forward in building the cornerstones behind what is now Unrivaled. Wade Martin and the team at Unrivaled on the baseball vertical did an amazing job there. And it was fun to build something literally that was already really well done and then just making it a resort.
So, Rick, I said one of the main things we want to talk about is I know you've been a huge advocate. We talked a couple of weeks ago. You said you thought softball was going to experience a big boom in 2026. ESPN comes out and says we're going to carry all 22 games of the Little League Softball World Series linear. One, I didn't even realize that they weren't all linear. That kind of surprised me to begin with. But two, if you could just speak to what you think that impact is going to be to grow softball as a whole in the year and beyond.
First of all, look at what the Little League World Series has done for, youth baseball in general over the years. ESPN, more ABC, but then with ESPN, working with ABC over the years, has had a 50-year relationship with the Little League International. It's been a wonderful, partnership, and it really has been a partnership between the two to what it is today. I mean, the ratings for the regional tournaments to get into the Little League World Series is amazing, and everything. So now that they're putting that additional focus with going into softball, it can only be good the more that we get games, produced live and produced, on ESPN and to as many people that can watch. I think it's great. I think The folks at Dick's Sporting Goods should be heralded for being very early on this with Little League International, with both baseball and softball. I think it's fantastic. So I think it's a good thing. There's a lot. The reason why I believe I'm very bullish on girls softball right now, fast pitch softball, is first of all, organizations like the Fast Pitch Alliance and Jamie Lobries, who's running that, is fantastic. It's the the grassroots level of getting more girls to play softball is a good thing, right? I'm a big stick and ball person. I love baseball. I consume it at a very high level, always have, and I've always felt strongly. I will tell you, James, that one of my appointment viewing every single year is the Women's College World Series. It's so exciting to watch the games. They move quickly. The competition is insanely good, right? And the fundamentals, and that's one of the things that, like, I can say this as a baseball player. I think girls learn the fundamentals quicker than the boys do. And I can say that from my own eye test and also seeing it, right? Now, of course, as they get older, the games start to diverge because of the differences between, going to the bigger fields. The boys go to the bigger fields and girls basically stay on the same size fields for the most part and everything. And the games change at that point in time. But I'm big on girls softball, big.
You mentioned the Women's College World Series, and I, having been a college beat writer, and we get into house, we get into revenue share, all these schools are going to start having revenue problems, and they're going to need to find ways to generate revenue. And you can only cut so many sports before you get to that point. My theory has always been softball is the next big boom revenue sport because it's, as you said, it's a stick and ball game. It's baseball. Everyone understands it, but it's fast. It's exciting. And it's something where, for want of a better, term or anything, it's a stadium you can sell tickets. It's not like other sports where you're not really able to sell tickets and everything. So do you think that impact of, hey, it's on ESPN, it's exciting, even though we're talking about youth sports, it's a trickle down of the college then exposes it to kids, obviously, and it kind of goes down the pyramid?
Yeah. First of all, I think one of the biggest steps that's going to help girls softball in general is the fact that, like, the AUSL has been developed. There's, professional girls softball now, from Athletes Unlimited Softball League. I think that's going to help be a aspirational thing that the girls now can see themselves playing professional softball. I think that's a huge point. Because I think before that, James, to your point, the Women's College World Series saw the girls saying, oh, I'm going to go and play, for my college team or whatever. But then there was a stopping point of that's where your career is going to end. The fact in 2 years that they're going to be in the Olympics is a big deal, which I think is really going to help out a lot. I have to tell you, though, and yes, Oklahoma City is the, home of, girls softball, women's softball, and understandably so. I have to tell you, though, and I have a very strong opinion that I wish that the Olympics would have the girls softball or the women's softball in LA, not in Oklahoma City. I fully understand why they're doing it. They're going to get huge crowds. I think it's going to be wonderful for the sport. But the Olympic spirit, which we're watching right now, right, happens live in the city in which you're in, right? And so it'll be an amazing experience, and I'm sure the LA 28 Olympic Committee is going to do a phenomenal job, as is Oklahoma City, in hosting it. They're wonderful, right? But there's something different from being outside of LA for the Olympics, for opening ceremonies and for everything that they're going to be doing. I hope that they get a chance to walk in either the opening or closing ceremonies and be able to compete like that. But going back to your point, though, more girls playing softball, more girls thinking that there's a career beyond, being 12 or going beyond college is a good thing for the sport.
Real quick, I didn't expect to go this way, but you kind of jogged my mind. Like I went to South Carolina. They won 2 national titles, College World Series when I was there. I know that Oklahoma City and Omaha are so important to the sport.
Yep.
Do you think that they should start maybe considering putting these events out to bid, just like everything else? I'm just curious because I know Oklahoma City is a big deal, but if we're talking about growing a sport, to me, you've got to bring it to other parts of the country. especially Omaha and Oklahoma City, they're not impossible to get to, but they're more remote than having. I know weather is an issue. Having it in a Philly, in a New York, in a Boston, in a Florida, anywhere.
Yeah. So you're going into the argument of, why are southern cities the only cities hosting the Super Bowl, and why do they move it around? And the World Series is always better because you got the home crowds involved. That's what makes this. I've been to 10 Super Bowls. The Super Bowls are incredibly antiseptic when you get there, as far as there are a lot of home, people buying tickets at outrageous prices. But is it a true home field advantage, other than when, Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl in their own stadium, and that was unique, obviously. But to speak to a home of something, look, if the sport continues to push everything into Oklahoma City, I'm with you 100%. I think that's a bad thing, right? I think spreading out, the fact that they have super regionals and the NCAA has all that and it makes it go outside of that, I think that's important. But to move it around, James, I like that there's a home place for the College World Series, for both the men and the women. I've been to both, right? And Omaha, by the way, let's just don't put a crossover what's happening with the men's College World Series. It takes over Omaha. I mean, the same way Oklahoma City's taken over. Both of those, I would tell you, I've been, when I was at ESPN, I got a chance to travel the world, and I've been to almost every big event you can speak of and everything like that. There is something incredibly unique about the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. There just is.
And I definitely see the value of that. Like I've been to several NCAA wrestling championships. I don't know if you've ever been to one. There are some cities, Pittsburgh, great. We never got to Minneapolis in 2020 because of the pandemic. Minneapolis would have been incredible. I was there for the Big Ten championships the year earlier. But then, I had a lot of fun in Cleveland when I've been there to cover Giants games. Cleveland was not prepared to host that event. They were not prepared for 20,000 wrestling fans to file out of the arena at 9:00 at night and need to eat. Right. Same thing with Detroit. We're not prepared for that. So I do see value in these big events with having a place that knows what they're doing. I don't think Omaha has last call issues or kitchen closing issues, or Oklahoma City when the event's in town.
I would tell you, it'll be interesting to see what the U.S. swimming does. They had an incredible, wonderfully run for the first time ever Olympic trials in Indianapolis. They went from going from very small venue to literally playing at where the Colts play, right? And it was awesome. And I believe that they're going to do it again in a couple of years. The question is, are they now going to move that around? Or are they going to say, no, Indianapolis is our home, even though, all the offices are based in Colorado, in Colorado Springs. So it'll be interesting. The NCAA, in the way that they're set up, calls for having a home of something. Like, with the football Big Ten national or the championship, Big Ten football championship is always in Indianapolis, right? And I think that is a way that it'll be interesting to see if Tony Petitti moves it around, to other big stadiums.
Obviously, ESPN sees something in youth softball. How do you think they make it a valuable media property in your mind?
ESPN, since I can remember, has always been dedicated to women's and girls sports, Kyle. And I think they have it in their DNA to make sure that everything that they're doing, both on the men and women's side, is equal as possible. So I think for them it's a natural progression to clear airtime, which is probably, by the way, was probably the reason why the softball games weren't probably televised before, because they have so many contracts with so many different people that they just didn't have the available airtime. I don't know that, but I'm telling you that probably had something to do with it. And the fact that, Burke Magnus at ESPN, probably said, this is a priority. Let's get the girls softball on air. And they made it happen.
To piggyback off of that, when I started buying Sandlot about 6-7 months in, I marked to Kyle Scott, our founder. I said, we write all the time about Perfect Game, Unrivaled, all these other baseball platforms, softball platforms. I'd written like the words Little League International once. How important is the ABC ESPN relationship to Little League to kind of keep it in this point? Because we keep waiting for someone to try to launch a competitor, and we've seen some tournaments develop, but it just seems like Ripken, PG, Unrivaled have a much bigger kind of market share in terms of discussion, discourse, exposure, but no one can compete with the four letters and three letters.
How important is CBS to the Masters?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what you're looking at. You're looking at historical partnerships that have grown in trust and in the way that both sides treats the event. I would tell you that there was never a discussion that I can remember when I was at both I've produced the Little League World Series when I was at ABC and at ESPN, one on the operational side, one on the production side. And it was never even a thought that it was going to go away from them. If they opened it up for bid, I will tell you, James, that they probably could make more money. They probably could, right? But the question is, would the new network treat it the same way historically that the way that the old network would? Now, look, that's no, spin against NBC or CBS or Netflix or whomever, right? But it's one of the last properties that is held firm to having a broadcast partner for as long as it has.
No, I've always said if the Masters went out to bid, they probably have left trillions. I know it's going to sound crazy to people. They probably have left trillions of dollars on the table over the lifetime.
Streamers is something that we never really talk about getting into youth sports. Do you see an avenue there, a strategy there? Netflix and Amazon Prime. I mean, NBC's doing a great job with the NBA right now. They're carrying a lot of good favor and stuff. Amazon Prime, I know people are happy with the NBA right now. Do you see that trickling down to youth sports one day?
I think what Samir's doing at Game Changer, going to HD feeds and everything is going to now be a progression towards more entry points for streamers to start taking the feeds or to start working together on that. I think it was very interesting. I thought you guys did a great job of not only just interviewing and talking about, the things of where they're going about, but also about how they did it and the progression. They took their time to get there, which, was not something just rushing for an ROI, which it seems like that most, I actually think it's a bad rap that like all these PE firms are going in to get a quick buck. It's not. I think it's the lot are seeing where the advantages are of growing their sports, and everything. And Game Changer is a perfect example of that. To answer your question holistically, 100% yes. How can any of the streamers look at how much money is going into youth sports and not want to delve into that?
Yeah, we've talked about I keep waiting for like a Netflix to buy the Texas high school football playoffs. And I figure to me, that doesn't really need to be sold. That's just people know Friday Night Lights. They know Texas high school football is a big deal. Just put the games on the streamer. I figure people will watch that. You can create, a Drive to Survive. Obviously, you're knowledgeable of F1. You can create some sort of content like that to explain who the teams are, introduce them to people before it starts.
So you just brought up something really smart, which is F1 was treading water for the longest time, right? Doing okay, especially internationally. And when I was at COTA, there was no Miami Grand Prix and there was no Las Vegas Grand Prix. We were the U.S. Grand Prix. Certainly in North America, there was, in Canada and Mexico City as well. But we were the only people in the United States. Drive to Survive comes up and the sport took off. They brought a entertainment element to it. They brought a behind the scenes element to it because notoriously F1 was like, nobody gets in the paddock. Nobody's allowed in, right? And now it's loosened up. It's gotten better. There's cameras all over the place. People are being microphoned, or being mic'd up and everything, which is what really gives that insight. You really want to talk about a sport that needs that more than anything else, in my opinion, is golf. They have got to break down the barriers of the ropes and go inside the ropes more, right? I understand it's a competition and these guys are locked in for 18 holes and they don't want there to be, so much outside influence of like every word said to their caddy could be taken live. There's ways around that. You guys know that, 5-second delays or not air anything live, just put everything on delays. But there has to be an openness for inclusiveness, right? To be able to get more into it and draw more people in. And I think that the streamers are much further along with that than the networks are.
You're right. I'm amazed. So Six Nations rugby is going on right now, and I watch it. And a couple of years ago, there was a call at the end of a Scotland-France match that if that call had been made in an NFL game here, there would have been riots in one of these cities. Basically, Scotland scored a try at the last second to win, and they did a video review, and the ref was like, I really can't tell if the ball hit the ground, so no, we're not, the call was made on the field, wave it off, France wins. But there was no outrage because everyone got to watch the deliberations and the guys talking to each other. So I think that to me is fascinating. I think it's going to show you that access is the great equalizer. People can't be invested in things that they don't know about. I think that's a big problem we're seeing in college sports, where these coaches are control freaks and no one gets good at practice, and you don't really know who's going to be on the field until the kickoff because of injury reports and everything. But the fact that you open everything up, people are more informed. I think they can become more invested in it.
So you want to open up Pandora's box? Let's now start talking about how gambling has changed the way that pro sports are viewed and inside information and how the betting public. And this is one thing I'm very concerned about in general, just being, someone that cares about the youth gambling. That is going to be something that in the next couple of years, you guys, is going to become a real thing. It's going to become a lot more spoken about. It's going to be talked about as far as, kids, making really bad decisions because they're caught behind the 8 ball of being addicted to gambling.
Because it's so in our face, or are you talking necessarily throwing games in big time competitions?
Well, I think that the throwing of the games is always going to be something that's monitored. And for the longest time, by the way, long before internet betting happened, Vegas was the top place of what would tell the NFL or tell the NBA, hey, we had an enormous amount of money come in on, a team. Something's not right. And they knew better that for Vegas, right, a pristine event that's run way above board is so important for them, right? So if there's something, because they could be taken advantage of and lose millions and everything, and then so the efficacy of the sports is the way it's run and everything is so important to the gambling side as well as to, the professional leagues and everything. What I'm worried about, Kyle, with that is it's so in your face. And so everybody's talking about, betting. By the way, I don't have the attention span to bet per play or per pitch, right? That just astounds me that the Cleveland Guardians pitcher, one pitch, that's all that they're saying. Or there was a couple pitches that somebody made, and he threw a ball or whatever the thing was. I'm sorry, I don't know all the ins and outs, but it was enough to get national exposure, right?
Yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah, and I think things like prediction markets that are very unregulated, at least gambling's regulated, obviously, but prediction markets is something that scares me that, we'll see what happens in the future and stuff. But the way they are, some of the markets on the predictions on Kalshi or on Polymarket, would I be shocked if they put Little League World Series championship on there? Absolutely not this summer.
That's scary. Yeah, and by the way, I'm there with you, but boys, that's scary.
We had that this past summer, and it was just offshore books, and obviously Little League put out a statement condemning it, and it got a lot of media attention. But that was just, that's stuff that's in the Caribbean you have no control over. Kyle's right. You get to a prediction market now, it gets dicey. Rick, one last question about softball before we kind of pivot.
Yeah, please.
We interviewed Dan Himmel at middle school matchup last week, and he was kind of talking about how there's not a lot of middle school baseball because it's a field. One of the issues is the field thing. You have a baseball field, there's only so much you can do with it. The fact that softball doesn't have a mound, it has a circle, from a facility operator standpoint, how advantageous is that? In that, obviously you got to put up a fence and a foul pole, but you can pretty much put a softball field on any turf surface. You even can, we all see the bolt in the mounds on the circle too. I mean, how big is that it's a little bit more flexible, the softball playing surface?
Yeah, the adoption of a softball field onto an existing baseball field is not that difficult. However, I will tell you that the softball community is looking for facilities that are 100% dedicated to them, and not always having the base, or the base is like so much shorter, and then you're showing where the normal bases are, and the out in the infield back line that is deep, and the players are playing like as if an infield's in for a baseball game, right? Type of situation. I think they want their own fields, and they deserve those. However, I don't want to talk out of both sides here. Let's make sure that I'm clear. If that's going to be the venue that gets more girls to start playing baseball or softball because the availability of the facilities is there, I'm all for it.
Let's pivot over to Savannah Bananas. What was your reaction to the Savannah Bananas news that they were getting into youth sports?
First of all, who's going to bet against Jesse, right? I mean, the guy has killed it as it relates to taking everything he has touched and put an immense amount of work and desire and listening to so many different voices and making sure that they try it, tweak it. If something's a mistake, kill it, go with something else. I mean, I'm impressed by his business acumen and choice and risk taking. That he's like, if he believes in something, he's going. There is no stopping him. It's like, fill the tank with gas and let's run, right? So now he wants to get into youth baseball and banana ball with the youth side, right? That's not as easy as a putt as what he was doing, right? In the whole thing, because now you're talking about kids playing the banana ball way versus a traditional baseball way. Let's make that distinction: banana ball versus, let's say, traditional baseball. The one thing that will never go away from either one of those, distinctions is you have to learn how to catch the ball. You have to learn how to hit the ball. You need to learn how to develop your skills as a baseball player to be able to do both of those. It's undeniable. You can't teach a kid to catch a ball behind his back without teaching him to catch it in a normal manner first, right? And I'm not saying that he's not discounting that, that he's discounting that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he's now saying, in fact, there was a quote that he made, which if you guys don't mind, I want to be able to say. He goes that there will be choices that could be made for the dancing and the singing and playing a banana ball. And that's what's going to be interesting. Will parents who typically make the choice of what sport the kids are going into, historically maybe because of their own desires and what they played, are they going to say, you know what? No, I don't want my kid playing Little League Baseball. I want them playing banana ball, right? It'll be interesting to see. And the other thing with banana ball versus everything is that they're still in their infancy stages. If you think about it, they have 6 teams now. So they went from 26 players now to having 156 players. And it'll be interesting to see if all 6 teams can perform at the same level as the original banana ball team. Because you were picking the best 26 players to do something incredibly entertaining. It's like whenever we talk about expansion in any major sport, baseball's talking about it, what's the very first thing? Will expansion dilute the pool? Is there not enough players to be able to continue to play Major League Baseball if we add 2 teams? My answer is, of course it is. But now the question is that with Jesse, and I'm sure they probably had this conversation, are there 156 baseball players or banana ball players that can play at the exact same level as the banana ball guys do, right? So the answer is probably yes, but the point is that has to be developed.
Honestly, when this first came out, I had the same thought you did, like, how is this going to work? Are we going to have kids? And I was also looking from a safety standpoint. The Bananas are highly trained professional athletes who have ability, whereas, a kid trying to throw the ball between his legs to first base, it could go bad really quick. Is it possible that the play for them is just like create a platform like similar to a Ripken baseball, not Unrivaled Ripken, but Ripken, the organization, where all of these massive brands, because I know Jesse's talked about affordability, they want to do business with the Savannah Bananas. If the bananas are worth $1 billion, they're going to be Apple is worth $1 trillion. They might want to be, doing something with the bananas, where the brands help subsidize it. They keep the affordability down. Obviously, you have some, music, whatever. You have some sort rules, about parents, about playing time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's just a Savannah Banana branded competition, same as Ripken, same as Little League. And then it funnels into like a Banana Ball World Series where it's traditional baseball from start to finish, but they just kind of subsidize it, make access, make sure the kids are having a great experience. And then when you get to the Banana Ball World Series in Savannah at the end of the year, at that point, you kind of incorporate some of the magic that the bananas have into it.
What's interesting about sports is we live in a meritocracy. You win, you move on, right? That's the core of sports and winning championships. I can't remember thinking of watching a banana ball game of wondering who won, right? I went purely, and I've seen them live once, and I walked away like, wow, this was absolutely amazing. In fact, what was interesting one time, I was interviewing in a job interview situation, and one of the board members asked me, what do you think about banana ball? And I know exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to say, are you a traditionalist or are you somebody who thinks outside the box, right? That's how I took the question, right? And so Jesse has brought that, to banana ball. It'll be interesting to see as they start to mature, and if they want to have a World Series and all that, is it significant of who wins, right? Because that will change the game. Right? The players will take it. Not that they don't. It's really hard to use words that then they could take offensively. Because I'm not saying it's offensively. I'm a huge fan, right? But will the game be treated differently now that there's a monetary aspect to who wins a game, right? That will change banana ball drastically.
I think it'll also be interesting. Like the Harlem Globetrotters for a period. I remember when I was a kid, like, they would do their show, obviously, but then they'd go play Michigan State in an exhibition preseason game, and they'd play straight basketball. So I'm curious, but my guess is that won't happen because we all know baseball is a funny game. Anything can happen. I don't think the New York Yankees want to play the Bananas in Tampa an exhibition game because they might lose. Just because that's baseball. That's funny. Like when I was at Carolina, Francis Marion University, D2 school, they said, hey, we're going to build a new stadium. Ray Tanner said, you know what, we'll open the stadium. We'll go down and play you guys in Florence to open your stadium. The stadium opens 5 years later. South Carolina is now the two-time reigning College World Series champion. They go down on a Wednesday night. They lose to a D2. Now, the world kept spinning, but that can happen. It's baseball.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing is that, first of all, let's take a step back. If Jesse is developing something to where more girls and boys are playing baseball and softball, I'm in. How do I invest? And I don't mean necessarily with my dollars, with my effort and with whatever, voice I have in the marketplace, I'll be behind that 100%. So how can you not be, right? When he talks about the affordability of being able to play baseball, and everything, I think, look, there's so much notoriety right now and discussion behind PE firms getting in and buying, travel baseball teams and, showcases and tournaments and all these different things. By the way, that's a small percentage of the amount of baseball games that are being played on an annual basis. They're still being played grassroots wise. Little League baseball is huge in every single zip code in the United States. Nobody's going to get in front of Little League baseball as far as the amount of games being played, right? And so, I think it's going to be an interesting move into where things go, this whole thing. By the way, what I think is really, really interesting as it relates to, increasing the amount of people or kids playing sports in general is, yes, it's on the grassroots level, and it's a lot of people talking about that, you know what, he wants to bring baseball back to the fun again. I personally don't see the fun being lost, right? Because, and by the way, I'm in that 1% or 10% who will never go away from the game and the whole thing. I just think it has everything to do with the fact that more kids playing sports in general is good for the holistic of any single individual sport.
Do you have any insight, or do you have a take on what they might do? Do you think it's going to be mostly based around leagues, or do you think it's going to be maybe a couple tournaments a couple times a year?
I saw that they're starting with Baseball Banana U. It's a camp that they're doing this coming summer. It'll be interesting to see, you know, what comes out of that. I think that's the first step into what he's talking about, of having kids play banana ball at a camp, right? It'll be fun. I'd actually like to go just to watch. I would love to see how they're taking the youth sport and introducing it to these kids in a camp atmosphere. I think that's going to be great.
We got to get down there, James.
We do.
Yeah, look that up on there. That was, by the way, that's exactly where I was right before coming on.
Yeah, we definitely will. I actually personally, I'm a millennial. James is a millennial. James has kids. I don't have kids. Kyle has 2 kids right now that are 10 and 7, so he's kind of in the thick of youth sports and everything. I think this lends to Savannah Bananas. I think there will be a societal shift in the way the millennial parents will choose rec baseball for longer over travel or club for their kids. Do you have a take on where you think youth baseball is going in terms of AU versus club versus travel versus rec?
You know what? That's hard. And it's hard for me to walk away from my traditional baseball side.
It's fine.
Of little league, travel, high school, college, get drafted, minor league baseball, play in the show. To me, it's like, I never thought, I was lucky enough to be a first round draft choice of the Brewers many, many years ago. I never thought I was never not going to play baseball, because it was just something that was in my blood. It was how my brother, I was lucky enough to have an older brother who said, yeah, come play with us. And I always got a chance to play with kids that were 3 years older than me, which I'm sure made me a better player sooner, because I had to play up to those standards. And now to introduce, a different type of baseball with different types of rules and everything like that, I think the adoption rate's going to go slow. It just makes sense whenever there's when there's a disruptor, it always happens slow. But by the way, if it takes off and has this huge gathering, I'm all for it.
I also think, and I'm curious what you think, Rick, I'm a big firm believer. Obviously, my son is 13 months old, so we're not there yet. But I would like to think that I will be a better youth sports parent if he's interested in sports, because I never played at a high level. I topped out in high school, but I was a beat writer for a decade. I covered the NFL, covered college football. I think people who have actual experience with high-level athletics, I think, are much more realistic and grounded in youth sports. Whereas, I want everyone to have fun, but I also know that, and we've talked about this in the past, Major League Baseball players, you kind of know when they're 14, 15. You know what you're looking at. Mike Trout got off the bus in high school, and you're like, okay, that's a Major League Baseball player. Prince Fielder was hitting the ball out of Tiger Stadium when he was 12. So I think that is also something that I think is a big factor, is people who have this experience. Obviously, parents, even if they don't have that professional experience, they'll have it if they participate in travel sports, as they kind of grew up. People who have seen what top-level athletics looks like, I think that'll also inform the decisions they make.
It's interesting. One of the things at Cooperstown that I had the luxury to be able to do is to watch some very high-level 12U baseball. And, I have a pretty good eye towards the fundamentals of the game and the nuances behind. I could watch a game and I could probably pick out, of the 18 kids playing, which one has the best shot at playing college baseball. And then getting drafted, maybe, because then your percentages even go lower, right? I will tell you that I saw some kids come through there that were just physically gifted to what you're talking about with Trout, and everything, that you can see The only thing that's going to stop this child is an injury or themselves, right? When I played minor league ball, we had, I won't name his name, but we had this amazing guy who was just the most gifted player. He was ripped, never lifted weights, it didn't seem like everything, and he just had everything going for him. He couldn't get out of his own way mentally. And the mental aspect of this game of baseball is really hard, right? Going 0 for 4, right? By the way, you're in the Hall of Fame if you fail 7 out of 10 times, right? In the major league level. But to get there, baseball is a game of failure. And so mentally, and by the way, the drop off because of going from a 12U field to then going to a bigger field, 13, 14, 15, and the physical abilities to throw the ball across the diamond or be able to hit, or the pitcher is getting stronger and everything like that, calls for the sport to weed itself out, which is really unfortunate because most kids will stop playing when they're 13. And I know Major League Baseball takes that very seriously.
I think the mental aspect is also important. As you said, those traditional levels, the steps on the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we have NIL, now that we have revenue share, I'm just curious. I would think a lot of college baseball players, guys who would have signed out of high school, or guys would have signed their junior year, or gone to a junior college and gone sophomore year, you're now looking at the decision between, I'm going to go play A-ball, and I'm going to go play 6 days a week, and on my day off, we're going to take an 8-hour bus ride either home or to where we're going to play the next 6 games. Or I want to play college baseball, and I'm going to make more money than I would playing A-ball, and I'm going to have a much better experience. I think you're going to see more kids want to stay in school, which then means there's fewer roster spots for kids in high school, and you kind of create this logjam. So I think it's interesting to see where that kind of shifts, where those kids go.
To your point, more kids are going to stay in. I absolutely despise the portal. I think it's the worst part of where we've gone over the last 3 years, the last 4 years in college football and basketball, that kids can play at 4 different schools over 4 different years. First of all, are they graduating? There's probably, I'm an old school person when it's like, are they going to school, right? Or are they just playing, right? Because then that's a professional baseball team or professional football team and everything like that. And I think if I were to change college football or rules with NIL, I would say you can move once. That's it, right? And then you got to stick it out.
I think they should all. I've always been an advocate, and I know this gets into employment status, collective bargaining, all the things the NCAA and its member institutions do not want to go to. I really think if we could have multi-year deals, it would help the sport because I know Kyle went to Temple. Temple does not have the resources that Villanova has, obviously. But if Temple's coaching staff can find kid diamonds in the rough, maybe overpay them a little bit out of high school, but hey, it's a 3-year deal, then you have a chance to develop something. And then, yes, maybe if he's a senior year and you want to go get paid the big bucks by Kansas to be a mercenary, it's there for you. But Temple got 3 years out of you, 4 years of you redshirt. They've developed you. I think that would be critical because I think it would help more high school athletes get scholarships, because I think a lot of schools that don't have the resources would be like, the Moneyball way to approach this is to find a kid and develop him for 4 years and guarantee him money rather than doing this hop to hop to hop thing.
But what's sad for the Temples of the world and others like that is that if the coach did an amazing job and he believed in a kid and recruited him and brought him in, and the kid has an amazing freshman or sophomore year, he's gone. He's gone. He's going to go play for one of the top 4 conferences and make money. And then Temple's left holding the bag, right? Which is not right. And by the way, that just all that means is in one of my favorite events is the March Madness coming up here shortly. Cinderellas are done, right? It's only going to be teams from the top 4 conferences.
Man. Can we shift over to parents for a second?
Please.
Yeah, so we wrote in the newsletter, the U.S. Center for Safe Sports, they did their first ever national coaches survey report, and it came out and identified parent behavior as the top issue. Now, obviously, at Cooperstown All-Star Village, you've seen every parent under the sun, but the survey identified something like 50% the survey identified something like 56% of impacted coaches were verbally abused by parents. You've seen obviously a ton of parents during your time. Is this an issue, do you think, or baseball parents get a bad rep, or parents in general?
I definitely think that parents in general are getting a bad rap over the bad few. I've seen some of the most amazing parents, some of the most amazing teams root for great games, and when a child, a 12-year-old is a child, makes a great play in the field from the other team, and the opposing parents are giving him a standing ovation, that is one of the best things I got a chance to witness. After teams lose at Cooperstown All-Star Village, so let's say 100 teams show up. Only one team's going to walk away from the championship, right? The other 99 teams, there is a really good chance, Kyle, that those kids will never play again together again. They probably grew up as 8-year-olds playing on the same Little League baseball team, and then traveled and then went to one of the other Ripken sites and then came to Cooperstown, right? And then, there was this, what we call the rite of passage of coming through to Cooperstown your 12-year-old year. They would lose their last game, all but one team would do that, right? The parents would be crying like babies because this was an end of an era. Their best friends, the parents would travel together and, hey, can you give my kid a ride? Can you pick my kid up from practice? All of those things that are important about the culture of baseball at that age, right? The parents are as much into it as the kids are, right? Maybe even more. But yes, there's some bad parents that get way overboard. They think their kid's the next Derek Jeter, right? And then when things don't go their way or whatever, they act out. And they get into a situation where I think that if you put a mirror up to them, the majority of them will catch themselves saying, I can't believe I did that, because they're so caught up in the moment. Does that happen? And did I see it happen? Of course I did, right? There was way too many games that we saw, and of course we dealt with it. I will tell you, though, that one of the things that we did, which is really important, is that we instructed the umpires to actually have an active part in trying to minimize parents and their activity pulling against the game or being vocal or things like that, and then calling us over as leaders amongst us, saying, hey, listen, we're on field 4 right now, there could be a possible situation. We would go down there, and the majority of the times, because I was very forward facing and I met every single coach that came through Cooperstown for 4 straight years, they all knew me and what I was about. Right? So when I came over to handle a situation, they've already talked to me, right? And they already knew that, look, let's just get through this week and let's have a great week. And so I think that the places running these facilities and running all these tournaments have got to be present. It can't be roll a ball out and just hope for the best, especially when you're talking about high-level travel tournaments.
And then right now with the Winter Olympics going on, Norway is leading the medal count for, I think, the 4th time in the last 4 years. So it's like a big talking point. We're getting all our think pieces about the Norway model of youth sports and everything, but they don't do scorekeeping or championships until 13. They emphasize fun through parents and coaches, and they have a national philosophy of joy of sport for all. Do you think that could be, now we're comparing apples to oranges. We're comparing a country of 5 million people versus a country of 300 million people. 1 million kids play youth sports in Norway, 27 million play in the United States. Do you think that is a model that could work in the United States? Would you say we should adopt that model? What's your kind of thought process on that?
No, I don't think it'll work, because I don't think our country and the competitiveness of our country and the meritocracy of our country, of that you win and you move on, right, is embedded in all of us in every single sport that we do. Do I love the idea of sandlot baseball, of kids going out and just playing for the love of the game? Of course they keep score, but it doesn't matter, and they just love. I did that. I don't know if you remember playing over the line. That was like, I lived to play over the line when I was a younger kid and play with my older brother and stuff like that. And of course we kept score, but it really didn't matter, right? But to do it on a national basis, first of all, I applaud them. The fact that they decided that that's something important that they want embedded in their culture as a country. Could the United States, fundamentally go backward to that? I think it would be very difficult.
I do think there are, like, for instance, their argument for trophies, which is, hey, the kids like the trophies, it makes them happy, give the kids a trophy. It's a pretty compelling counter argument to all the participation trophy complainers. And the kids like them. Like, does it really matter at the end of the day? So I do think there are aspects of the North, but I think Rick is right. I just also think there are just certain. I think that I've noticed in sports and culture, like, for instance, when Todd Bowley, the Dodgers co-owner, bought Chelsea, and he, like, recommended that maybe the Premier League consider, like, having a playoff for the final relegation spot. They, like, acted like, how can you recommend this? And I was like, well, it makes kind of sense, you know? But over here, like, we're never going to do promotion or relegation. Obviously, the financial implications of
way too much.
You buy a team for $500 million, and it's worth $50 million after penalty kicks. But two, it's just like, they're just things that I just don't think match up culturally, and it's a great idea, but we can't unring.
So let me talk about participation trophies for a second. Every baseball and softball tournament that I know of gives participation rings at the end, of their tournament, right? And rings in our society, listen to ESPN on a daily basis. Who's got the chip? Who got the ring? Who got all these things? And now we're giving, rings to every participant that comes through. I'm fine with that as long as one team gets the gold ring and everybody else gets the platinum or the silver ring, right? I do believe, especially in travel sports, so let me quantify that, right? Is in travel sports, you are playing to go to a tournament and to try to play to win it, right? The majority of the teams are. There are teams that are going just to have the experience, and I applaud those too. But they know where they're at, when they go to the certain things. I'm a big believer that when someone wins a tournament, they should be held up.
Agreed. No, I agree 100%. And going right now, touching on the Norway model, it's a lot of individual success. If you look at it, it's a lot of cross country skiing. It's a lot of Nordic skiing. It's a lot of they haven't performed well in the team success. I mean, I think a couple of their most important sports are soccer and ice hockey, and I think they're making their first appearance in the World Cup since 1998 this year, and they've never medaled in the Olympics in hockey and stuff. So I think that also takes away from how a lot of these think pieces are saying that we should develop the Norway model, when it's like there are some deficiencies in the Norway model as well as the U.S. model, maybe in terms of individualistic properties compared to kind of team properties on that side. So
did you guys happen to catch that Norway skier who was sprinting?
That was awesome.
Up the hill. I guess he's the most decorated Winter Olympian in history. I wish I remembered the guy's name. I'm doing him injustice. And by the way, I was TikToking or looking through social media, and one guy had the best line ever. He goes, "Can you imagine what that guy does to work out to be able to do that? Like what his daily workout routines are to be able to then perform like that in the Olympics?" He's right.
I think it was running a 6-minute mile uphill, basically, is what they compared it to. It was something. It was something crazy.
Look, to get me to shut up and not talk is quite the Herculean task. I sat there with my jaw open and I was screaming to my wife. I go, "You've got to come see this."
Last one for me. What do you think it's important for major brands to sponsor youth sports, to get into it? I mean, we talked about Dick's Sporting Goods, their sponsor, and obviously the Little League Softball World Series. What's your thought on kind of major brands? Huddle and Nike just partnered to put the swoosh on some highlights in the last week. Just curious.
I'm a big proponent of it. I think that, look, if they're going to be selling apparel, gear, and everything to all the kids to play these sports, they need to reinvest, right? They need to reinvest back into those sports, and not just at the higher level on the travel side, right? That's what I love about Dick's, right? I'm a big fan of their business model, is because they absolutely reinvest in youth sports all the time. Sure, are they driving traffic into their bricks and mortar stores at Dick's Sporting Goods? Sure they are. They're running a business, right? Game changer. the more hands that you can put the streaming services into the parents and everything is a fantastic thing, right? However, they reinvest. They do a great job of making sure that they're helping the culture of more kids playing sports, right? So I love their business acumen when it comes to that.
Well, Rick, this was awesome, man. We really appreciate the time. You gave us more than I think we even asked for, so we really appreciate that and everything. And just wanted to say thank you for coming on, and good luck with everything. And we can't wait to follow you on LinkedIn. Is there anything you want to promote or plug before we let you go?
No, I'm good right now. I hope you guys bring me back. It was
Definitely.
a lot of fun to talk about a bunch of stuff. And,
Anytime you want.
Yeah.
Well, you
Doors
guys
open.
let me know. I'll join in as many panels as you guys want, because I there's one thing I'm not short of is opinions.
Are you coming to the summit?
Believe it or not, I might have a scheduling conflict, and that's the only reason why I haven't shown up.
All
good.
All good.
Yeah.
All good. All good. We'll get you at the next one.
It sounds great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rick, so much.